Well, good morning again. Today's an interesting day. Every day is an interesting day. Today is May 22nd. It is the 7-year anniversary of my brother Mike's death. 2 weeks ago, we were certain that we were going to lose my oldest sister. But through none other than a miracle, not only is she with us, the latest reports that we've gotten is that her body is actively healing itself, and there's much to celebrate today. We also celebrate a new sister in Christ, and we celebrate a new baby who arrived today. This afternoon, Natalie will go to a viewing of an 18-month-old baby who died in a very tragic accident. So we have these constant highs and lows, life and death, and so it's just a reminder to be kind to people. You never know what's going on in the lives of people underneath the surface, and it's just, I think, a good reminder that life is precious, life is short, and we ought to live every breath with compassion and kindness. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his step. Proverbs 16:9, that is our theme for this year. Again, it's vital that we make plans. Plans change, but we still have to make plans. But it's God who establishes our steps. It's Him who anchors us and anchors our soul. We're also talking about this process of loving neighbors and then moving people to loving God, getting them to worship and fall down and dedicate their lives to worship God, our Creator, and then moving them to serving others, getting into the lives of others and doing good works for people who are in need. There are a couple lessons that I think are really important to teach our children from a very young age. And if I could boil these down to two main points, it would be this. The first is to do good always. And the second is to avoid trouble where you can. Those are lessons that I think are incredibly critical for us to teach our kids and essentially to teach each other. To do good always, that's something that Charles talks about, to do what's right always. And that means even when it's really challenging and it's really difficult. In fact, most times doing what's right often is the hardest path. To learn to do what's right and to do good always is incredibly challenging, but it's also really, really vital. The other is to avoid trouble where you can. And I think about how many people get locked into abusive marriages and they get stuck and trapped in those marriages that have lasting impacts for life. And so many people who I've run into over the course of at least the last decade who have just bemoaned the fact that if only they had known that this person wasn't the person who they thought they were marrying, that they never would have married them in the first place. And so teaching our kids to avoid trouble where you can is an essential part of life, to avoid bad people. And so that's what this series is about, that I kind of launched into last week. And we're going to be talking about this for a few weeks, but it's so, so important. Jesus spent a significant portion of his ministry warning people about other people. Now, he warned people certainly about themselves. Don't go down certain paths. Don't do things that will lead you to hell. He taught things like that, but he spent a significant portion of his ministry warning people about other people. And his message always was that when you have a wolf, you avoid them. You stay away from them. You don't waste your time, spend your time trying to coax them, trying to convince them, trying to get them to repent. You avoid them. And you keep them away from other innocent people. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about, is how do we identify people who are truly wolves. I don't know if you guys remember this horrible movie from 2001, Bubble Boy, but it's kind of a really poorly done movie. I don't remember much about the movie except that the acting was subpar. But Bubble Boy was this boy who lived inside of a bubble, and his mom, seen in the picture here, she was like spraying him with Lysol and scrubbing his bubble down and had him convinced that he had this autoimmune disease and he was allergic to everything. He was allergic to diapers. He was allergic to his own mother. He was allergic to all people, most foods. And so she kept him inside of this bubble. And eventually, he went out because he was so sheltered and could never leave the house. He fell in love with this girl, and she was going to marry the wrong guy. The guy had a big mullet and was like kind of a bad dude. And so he was in love with her and wanted to rescue her. And so he got the courage up one day, much against the will of his mother, to leave the house. And he went out and was completely ignorant of how the world worked. And so like part of, like there's one scene where he's riding on the back of a bike of some like tough biker dude that's really rough. And he's just like completely oblivious. And we have the saying like ignorance is bliss, right? We try to intentionally stay ignorant, and what we don't know won't hurt us. But in fact, the title of today's lesson is What We Don't Know Can Hurt Us. And it can hurt us badly. And so we need to be informed and not be like Bubble Boy and spend the rest of our life inside of a bubble. By the way, it had a happy ending. He learned at the end that he didn't, in fact, have an autoimmune disease, and the bubble came off, and then he could breathe and had a happy life ever after. Prior to the text that we're going to talk about today, Jesus is talking about the hatred of the world. He spends a lot of time in John chapter 15 talking about the hatred of the world. That is the hatred of the world towards Christians. And what's interesting is he's not talking about the world in terms of people out there. And we know this because Jesus talks about and clarifies it, saying that it's people who are doing this in the synagogues. It's within the religious community that Jesus labels them as people of the world. And he says these people have hatred in their hearts. And he's warning them. And these are kind of the key points from that long passage. I'm not going to read that whole passage in John 15, but here are the key points, the key takeaways. One, Jesus says, if the world hates you, it hated me first. In other words, don't feel targeted. Don't feel like you did something wrong. Don't feel like it's something inherent about you that makes people hate you. If the world hates you, it hated me first. It also hates Jesus. Jesus says, if they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. And so I think he's telling them this to say, don't be surprised. This is coming. It's going to come. It's not hypothetical. This will happen to you. And if they persecuted me, they're not going to stop there. They're not going to have a change of heart. They're not going to have a prison moment where they find Jesus in prison kind of thing. They have hatred in their heart. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. His next point is, whoever hates me hates my Father also. It's not just a Jesus thing. It's not just that Jesus was claiming to be the Messiah, and so the Jewish people hated him because that was considered blasphemy, but they really loved God. Jesus says, no, whoever hates me hates my Father also. And then his final point is that the Helper, the Holy Spirit, and you, the Christ followers, will bear witness about Christ. In other words, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to keep telling people about me regardless of the outcome in your life. To do good always. And so here's the passage, and I think this is just really eye-opening, personally. John chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, Jacob read it for us earlier. Jesus said, right after saying all these things, I've said these things to keep you from falling away. Not that Jesus is saying, you guys are going to be tempted to do these things. Jesus never even hinted at the fact that these people would be tempted to have hatred in their heart like the world. Rather, he's keeping them from falling away because this happens time and time and time again, where evil, corrupt people steal the souls of innocent people. They wear them down, and they make them think that there is no God, or that God is all evil, or that God is horrible, or that God wants these bad things to happen to them. So Jesus says, I've said all these things. I've warned you about these things to keep you from falling away. They will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you will think he's offering service to God. They're doing it in the name of God. And they will do these things because they have not known the Father nor me. But I've said these things to you, that when the hour comes, you may remember that I told them to you. I did not say these things to you from the beginning because I was with you. Jesus didn't say these things while he was with them because he was their protector. Jesus was doing the job of a shepherd. He was keeping the wolves at bay. And I want to talk about, as we kind of unpack this, and I'll give you some indicators for how you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that somebody's a wolf. Now, I've heard people be labeled wolves who are not wolves. I've heard this routinely in the church, where people identify people as false prophets, as wolves. They're using the language of Jesus in a really twisted way, basically for describing somebody they don't like or somebody who gets under their skin. And so the question is, how do we know the difference? How do we know the difference between a troublemaker and somebody who's a wolf? What's the difference? Is there a difference? How do we know the difference between somebody who struggles with sin and does really horrific things, yet receives mercy, and somebody who doesn't struggle with sin, but does really horrific things and has no mercy from Jesus? How do we tell the difference? And this is really vital. It's really important. And what I've found in my experience is that most Christians have never been taught to make that distinction. They don't know the difference, and so they just label everybody together and say, well, we're all just this mixed bag of sinners. All of us are sinners. All of us receive mercy, one the same as the other. And so the church is a welcoming place for everybody. And I could not think of a more dangerous message in all of the world. One that hurts the most amount of people is that message. That the church is a welcoming place for everybody. Who are we to judge? It's just a wrong message. And so I'm going to give you a quick word on wolves. And this is just based on my experience and kind of digging through Scripture, talking to hundreds of people. As I went around and did trainings across the country, these were some things that people really genuinely struggled with. Number one, I think it's really important to say that Jesus is describing, this is probably the most important, Jesus is describing not what they do, but who they are. He's not describing behaviors when he talks about wolves in sheep's clothing. He's not talking about behaviors as if it's something that could be changed or they can repent or, if we just give them enough study or give them enough love or give them enough community, they can change. He never describes wolves in that context, ever. He's not describing what they do. He's describing who they are. And never, when Jesus uses that language of wolves, he never even hints that they're able to change. Point number two, there's a tremendous fear and lack of confidence among people, among Christians. There's a fear of mislabeling somebody, which I think is a healthy fear. I don't want to mislabel somebody as a wolf when they're just, in fact, maybe somebody who's caught in a really bad time in their life, really struggling, having problems with addiction and having problems with you name it. I don't want to mislabel somebody as a wolf who's just having a hard time in life. So there's a fear of mislabeling somebody, and there's a lack of confidence in knowing for sure whether somebody is truly a wolf. Time and time and time and time again, I've heard Christians come back and say, I can't tell if somebody is really a wolf or not. Like, I wish there was just a checklist that I could go down through this checklist and be able to tell. I've got good news for you. It's not necessarily a specific checklist, but they're really clear indicators to tell whether somebody's a wolf. And then this hesitation almost always defaults back to mercy towards the wolf and slaughter for the lamb. I've seen it more times than I can count, period. That people who hesitate, people who are afraid to label somebody as a wolf, people who are afraid to establish really strong boundaries or to tell somebody they're not welcome inside the church, there's this hesitation that almost always will default back to mercy. And in the end, they'll say, you know what? Like, I'd rather err on the side of mercy than err on the side of being wrong and labeling somebody a wolf when they're not. And so their guard will come down. They'll allow the wolf back into the sheep pen. And always the wolf will devour sheep again, because that's what they do. And then finally, we should be able to quickly and confidently identify wolves and take action to keep them away. I'm going to close with this scripture and just kind of leave this with you guys to reflect on. But Jesus talks about being the good shepherd. Here's what he says. Truly, truly, I say to you, this is John chapter 10, starting verse 1. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hears his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. That sounds familiar. People still today, 2,000 years later, don't understand the words of Jesus. And so Jesus again said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. That is the thief's purpose. And he's describing wolves here. Their purpose is not to do good things and to wrestle with bad and to do some good and to do some bad. That's not their purpose. Their only purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. That's the difference between wolves and people who are sheep like you and I, who struggle with sin. We struggle with temptation. Wolves do not. And Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Talking about sheep. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand, and he cares nothing for the sheep. I'm the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me. And I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have a question, and I think it's a valid question. If Jesus is the shepherd who lays down at the gate, what's the purpose of laying down at the gate? The purpose is to keep the wolves out, right? To keep counterfeits from coming into the sheep pen, to destroy the sheep. If Jesus is so clear that he lays down his life for the sheep, he's not saying that he's going to lay down his life for the sheep and he's going to die so that the wolves can crawl over top of him and now they can get back into the sheep pen with all the sheep. He's saying he's willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of the sheep to keep the wolves at bay, to keep them out, to get them away from the sheep. Jesus consistently throughout scriptures talks about the need to protect our fellow Christians, the need to protect innocent people, the need to protect vulnerable people from people who are counterfeit and who try to climb over by some other way other than through Jesus, through the gate. And so I'm going to spend some time over the next few weeks. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I'm going to show you guys some really, really important key points where we can clearly identify wolves and that we can tell beyond the shadow of a doubt. And I think it's that clear. I think it's that black and white, that we can tell the difference between somebody who's a counterfeit and somebody who might just be a problem maker, or somebody who has a personality that we just clash with, or somebody who just has really bad practices as a Christian. There are people out there who are that way. Doesn't mean they're a wolf. We might want to disassociate with them and not use Christian words towards them, but that doesn't mean they're not a Christian. And so when we're talking about wolves, we're talking about people who so clearly are bent on destruction and willful destruction and destroying and annihilating the souls of people while pretending to be Christians. And they pretend really, really well. And if we can identify those people, and if we can teach our children to identify those people, I promise you, it will make our lives so much easier. And it will save so much destruction and annihilation and destroying of souls in the lives of people. I promise you that. And so this is so important, and is such an important thing, and it was such an important part of Jesus' ministry, and that's why I'm going to spend time on this. And then after that, it's not going to all be doom and gloom. We're going to talk about the good things. We're going to talk about finding the good in people and how we know when somebody's intrinsically good, because Jesus talks a lot about that too. So I hope you actually enjoy this series, because it's not going to be presented as this really horrific thing. I think it's going to be really useful tools that you guys can use, that you can add to your tool belt, and that you can clearly identify people who are absolute destructive people, and they will always be for the rest of their lives. The message is yours. If there's anybody this morning who has prayer needs or who has not taken the step to be baptized into Christ, we invite you to come up. We're all going to stand and sing this song together. Eric?